it was a challenge, I think, for a lot of people to get through this period, yeah, and I probably left some scars for some people, yeah. Just to wrap up, because I'm over time now, this was how we saw things before PaNOSC started. So we had these figures that we'd worked on and all of where we were, and this was what we said we would do after PaNOSC and what we would achieve with PaNOSC. And I think, you know, when I look at those, I think you will judge yourself today as well. I mean, as you hear feedback from everyone, I think these have all been achieved as we predicted we were going to do it. The only thing I haven't, well, ESRF said they would have, we estimated 50 petabytes, and I think we're more around 25 or 30 petabytes for the last year. But all of the other things have been achieved, I think. And so this is sort of, it's a satisfying feeling as a coordinator that we weren't so far off from what we were proposing to do. Yes, then, is this working? Yes, okay. Yeah, so you know, I like to read a lot and get inspiration from reading. And so there's one, I was looking for who could be considered the world's first open scientist, you know? And I don't know who would be your answer to this, but I sort of went back a bit further than 2000 or even further than that, is I came up with this guy, René Descartes, who I think, you know, he was someone who is considered to be the father of modern philosophy, and also probably one of the main first scientists who, after the approach that was followed for 1,000 years after Aristotle, was the one who came up with these a different approach to doing things. And I think the first thing is what's probably the closest to the heart of an open scientist is don't accept anything as true if you don't have real evidence for this. And you know, this was something which was, he wrote this actually as an introduction. This paper called Les Discours sur la méthode is only an introduction to a paper about optics. And this has been a text which I think has inspired people for hundreds of years. And we can say, yes, it's something that we could also follow as well. The second thing is, yeah, I mean, he was obviously someone who was very methodical, and he broke things down so that you could actually understand them. The strange thing I find, you know, also is, so you must start with the simplest things that you have and then build up things so that they become more complex. I find what is interesting about Descartes, often French are called Cartesians, and it sounds, so sometimes for some people it sounds almost like not an insult, but like a restriction, saying there's a lack of emotion or something, but it's not a, you know, as I've looked into what Descartes' philosophy was and what he wrote, and that I think it's far from this limited way of thinking, where it's actually much broader than you can imagine. Yeah, and I recommend people to take a look at this. You know, and this is actually a short text, which is only like 25 pages or that you can read. One thing I found quite funny about what Descartes wrote already in 1636. He was writing to his friend Mersenne, who was actually another scientist in France, and he just arrived in Leiden, and he said, yes, I arrived in Leiden so that I could send my work to the printer. And in those days, the printer was Elsevier, which I'm sure some of you know. And he already had problems with them, because now that they've seen me, yeah, they seem to think they have caught me, which has led to make difficulties. So I've decided to drop them. So I think, if you think that was already in 1636, you know. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here just to say that the work of Descartes and all these other scientists, actually a few years later after he died, you had the Royal Society. 1 year after he died was founded, and then a few years later Académie des Sciences. And these two like learned societies are pushing open science in a big way. So in a way, he was, I think, one of the triggers of this. And that's it. Yeah, enjoy the closing event, and looking forward to also talking to all of you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. We had some technical problems. I hope that people online are following us. And Andy is a very good speaker, but now we have Mads with us. He's a computational neutron scattering scientist at ISS, and he works in data management and software, has been collaborating with the World Package 5 in PaNOSC, and we'll talk about what we have done in simulations in the vinyl work package, the virtual neutron and X-ray laboratory, and in particularly about the post-project plans, because we have all collaborated. We know a lot about PaNOSC, but the important thing is what's next. So, Mads, please.
Bonjour. I've learned from Andy that this is how you start anything in, right? So, but honestly, it's an honor to open the closing event, and this is the people that have been working on Work Package 5, Vinyl, and all the affiliations we have. And this one won't work, so I need the mouse, I think. Or will you change the slide? No. Okay. So first, a quick introduction to our work package. It's very simple. We had this abbreviation, the Vinyl, Virtual, Neutron, and X-ray Laboratory. And our task was to harmonize simulation codes, thanks, for X-ray and neutron simulations, so that there's a knowledge transfer and an easy skill transfer. If you know how to use one of the codes, you can jump to the other easily. And then we had to agree on data formats, both for transfer of signal between the codes and for the final detected data. This was all led by Carsten Fortmann-Goethe, who wrote these part of the proposal and led the work package through these 4 years. And the answer to all of this can easily be summarized. We will make Python packages with OpenPMD for signal transfer and Nexus for data events. So the rest of this talk will be describing the solution we came up to. The headline I was given was sustainability, and that comes from this being an actually good solution, and it will carry on living if it solves the problem and has a purpose. So where did we start? We had the MaxDAS package for the neutron part. This is in a C meta language, not really any Python in how you write that. Then we have on the X-ray side, CIMIX, which is a Python framework, and OASIS, which is a GUI application. Both of these link to other actual simulation backends. And what we came up with was a common base framework that we could build our simulation packages on top of. We made a solution to script MaxDAS work from a Python API on top of this common framework. We made a new version of CIMIX that uses this framework again to harmonize. And even the simulation engines of OASIS was transferred to this framework so that they are coherent. And OASIS itself grew a lot and were easier to be hosted in the cloud. And so what is this framework? This was devised by a big group of us, Yunjing, Sherwin, me, and Carsten. I'm not showing this so you can understand all of it, but I'm showing that this is nicely thought out, base classes that you build upon. So this is not too rigid, not too flexible. It will constrain you to have a similar interface, but allow you to have the freedom to solve your problem however you want. But you get parameter classes, description of data, calculator classes, and so on, so that they have a similar feel whenever something is written on top of this framework. And we have made some packages on top of it, but it's open for expansion. This is something that we maintain together and agree upon, and hope that many more packages will use in the future. And now to CIMIX Lite, which is by Yunjing and Carsten. And this is in many ways the mold that we've used to make LibPyVinyl, that we have a chain of operations and intermediate data. So we start with a calculation, calculating the initial beam and store that. Then another calculator to propagate it, store that result as a wavefront data here. then make the photon matter interaction as another calculator, and then again store the intermediate data. And we go through that entire chain and end up with the detector data and data analysis, and that's how this simulation framework works. Yunxing have an example here of simulating a real detector at the European XFEL, adding noise and so on, with the purpose of trying to do this data analysis and see what conditions of the beamline would make the best possible data analysis. And this was done in a loop where we change the parameters of the instrument, run the simulation, perform the analysis, index the peaks, and repeat. And from that, he could devise that depending on the intensity of the beam, you would place the detector at different positions in space to get the highest possible rate of indexation of the peaks that would hit the detector. Very nice work. Yunxing was productive and published a number of papers using this framework, and that looks like it will live on because of this power that it has. Then there's OASIS. This is the more visual application where you link nodes together, and in that way each node has outputs and inputs, and you link them together. It's used in many places and is by Manuel and Alosha. Alosha added the visor and COMSIL, visor for wave propagation. That's one of the calculators for that in the libpyvinyl language, and then COMSIL, which allows for, this image got enlarged somehow, but it will describe the partial coherence of an undulator instead of assuming that it's fully coherent like the XFELs or more incoherent. But it can do the partial thing. And OASIS also was adapted to be more suitable for remote hosting and use. So you can now get it as a Docker container or serve it over a browser with full use of its visual interface. And here we see some of that visual interface with the nodes. And here they highlight that they have adopted the OpenPMD standard and that it can actually use CIMIX as a calculator, as a node in their framework. They have allowed for remote workplaces. We'll come to why that's really important for our overall project later, but that's just a link to a GitHub hosted or hosted elsewhere workspace that you can then start from. And one of the back engines, Shadow, was redone in the libpyvinyl way, and then all of the PaNOSC contributions got their own little folder, so you can clearly see who contributed all of this, and you can put the, for example, output to OpenPMD or scripting with Python and CIMIX directly in your workflow. They also made use of the nice Pan Training EU portal that was delivered by Work Package 8 to make a nice training course where you can learn how to use this software. And now onto the neutrons and MaxDAS which was my main contribution over the years. As I said, MaxDAS had this C meta language, and instead we wanted to work in Python. So this is an API that will allow you to build your MaxDAS instrument, run it, get the data, view the data, and use widgets. And it has this nice syntax grabbed out of a notebook. It will auto-complete parameters and so on. And I've found this to be a much more efficient way to work. It of course has a thorough documentation on a GitHub IO page written as notebooks that you can just download with easy install guides, help for the configuration, quick guides on all the different objects, and even in-depth tutorials about different concepts of MaxDAS and more advanced parts. But what's really nice about it is that there are these visual help tools. For example, the diagrams that, since the instrument object knows what it contains, we can ask it to generate a diagram. It will show some of those relationships all of these components have with each other. They're always a sequence in MaxDAS, but a lot of different things can happen if you ask MaxDAS to connect them in different ways. And you can get an immediate, easy overview with such a visual diagram instead of reading hundreds of lines of code. You can have widgets that allow you to do easy e-learning, where you change your parameters, press run, and then view your data in a new way. You can also ask these diagrams to see how the intensity of your beam evolves over your instrument or the wavelength distribution. So they're really powerful and one of the benefits of going to MaxDAS script. The next part is by Sherwin, who's here at the first row. This is the instrument repository. And that actually is a crucial part of this project, as it is where end users will go and grab a simulation from the cloud. This is a database. Where is it stored? We've chosen to store it all on Git, and that gives us obviously free hosting, but also all the collaborative tools that we need to keep the models of each instrument up to date, allow the responsible of those instruments to come and change them, create pull requests, and have well-documented instruments in one place. It's sustainable because it is a free hosting. Every research infrastructure can have their instruments in the same place, and we can maintain this API together instead of having many different APIs. And the API I'm talking about is what the end user will use to get an instrument from that database. They don't have to know Git or clone a repository. They can just grab the API, say I want this instrument at that institute, and then they get out the instrument object. And there's a bit of an example of how to do that. You import the module in Python, you initialize your repository, and then you can search through all the institutes and instruments and versions there are. For example, there is support for having the upgraded versions of instruments. As they change over time, you can say, I want it at that date before they upgraded the guide, because that's what corresponds to my instrument. Then you ask for that full list of specifications. You get your instrument object, and that knows everything there is to know about this instrument, the limits on the parameters, and so forth. And you can start to work with that, set how many neutrons we want to simulate, where you want the data, and so forth. And you can start to set the parameters. This is a triple axis neutron spectrometer, and we are setting energy from an angle. And we can select a sample from a number of predefined ones in the instrument, even sample environments. And then we can create a simple energy scan with a for loop. This is a bit of a view of the structure, where we have at the top the different institutes, then a list of their instruments, then a list of the different times they were valid, and then the different simulation packages. So you can actually have one instrument simulated with different packages and allow them to live side by side. Each individual simulation can have, of course, the Python file that produces the instrument object, but also requirements to run it, validation data, other scripts, so it's all packaged in one place. Another piece of work made by Sherwin is a digital twin implementation at ILL specifically. The idea is to have a twin of the instrument that grabs parameters from the users using the real experiment and then serving up simulation results corresponding to that configuration of the instrument. And so there is a structure behind the scenes monitoring what the instrument is doing, ensuring that new results are generated, and then converted to the same data format as the instrument would generate, so that the same analysis software can be used and you can see it side by side. Here's an overview of the structure behind it. We have the client that sends the request. We have the server that organizes all the requests that's coming in, grabs results from the McStas service, and is even clever enough to see that if you only change something with the sample, we don't need to rerun the entire instrument. We can grab the beam just before the sample and just save some computational time. So that's why it's segregated into these stages. And then that will ensure that the client gets the relevant and correct data. And here is an example from Nomad, which they use to view their data. And we can see some realistic looking data that will help the users understand what they are trying to do, or if it's a good idea to ask the instrument to do what they just told it. And so in summary, this is the kind of structure that we're ending up with. We have libpyvinyl as our base. We put our simulation codes on top of that so that they are similar and harmonized. We have OASIS that is now better connected with these, not just through using engines here, but also having the same data formats, being able to be hosted on the cloud in the same way. And then all of that can tie into this instrument database, where we can place both the requirements file telling the user which of these frameworks to download in order to run it, all the instrument code and everything that they need. And then there's a nice API to just get them. Even the digital twins will most often live in that space, in the version by Sherwin that is grabbed directly from the database. So that's really an entry point. And the user might not even know all of this behind the scenes. They just get to see what's in the database, and they can use it immediately. And so that is much more interoperable and can suddenly be hosted in the cloud. And that brings me to this sustainability. If this solves a nice problem, people will want to continue to work on it, even though our project is ending. And all of the packages we've developed have someone volunteering to keep maintaining it. Of course, this will be at a reduced level compared to the direct PaNOSC funding, but nevertheless, they will survive. So I've listed our main packages, the current situation, and what's after PaNOSC. For libpyvinyl, this was a broad collaboration between Yunxing, Sherwin, me, and Carsten. Sherwin will find better places, but the remaining will actually stay and have agreed to a monthly meeting on how we best continue. The instrument database is a really important element, which has mainly been Sherwin's project, and I will take over, ensuring that that gets both populated with some ESS instruments, and then awareness of this tool will be spread. McStas script, of course, I made that before, but I will continue supporting that simply because I'm now addicted to using Python instead of the C-meter language. Simics, both Yunxing and Carsten will continue, Yunxing at European XFEL. And for OASIS, we had Alasha and Manuel. Alasha ends with the project, will find other work, but Manuel can continue supporting that with all its new nice features. And with that, I thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mads. And before we go into the next session, just to thank you, thank Yunxing, and thank Carsten and Manolo as well, and many other people that collaborated in this work package, because I think that has been one of the great successes of PaNOSC. We have advanced a lot in simulations. And is there any question from the attendees here on site or remotely? Thank you very much. Ah, no, we have a question. Oh my God, I was like, yes, let's move on and keep the time. These people from the LL, oh my God.
Thanks, Matt. That was great. One of the themes I'm more interested in, I've been discussing a little bit with Servin, is this instrument database, which I think is a great idea. But of course, to fill it, you will need the direct involvement of the instrument scientists. I don't know how many neutron or X-ray instrument scientists are here, but how do you plan this? Because I'm afraid you will not be able to write all the instruments of the world to populate the table. Do you have any plans to involve the instrument scientists, to train them to fill this database, or what is your idea about this?
That is a very important subject. These are very busy people, and we have to show and convince them that the effort they need to put in is much less than the benefit they draw. And so we need to highlight those benefits. They are suddenly your users. When they write a proposal, they can access the instrument and see its limitations. Fewer proposal for the instrument scientists to reject because they didn't understand the limitations. Nicer access for users to do the digital twin, for example. Fewer late hours at the instrument. We need to understand what their struggles are in their everyday use of the instrument and find the ways this tool can help alleviate them and address them directly.
I have a follow-up on this, I'm sorry. Because we are building a similar database at DAISY for some other purposes. And what you said is correct. But how do you manage to get this information to the right people? This is our biggest problem. We know why there's a benefit, but they don't, and we don't know how to reach out to them.
That is true. It is a PR challenge for sure, and it needs to grow organically. I think that you need to work closely with a few of the instrument responsibility at a site, help them, and take some of that heavy work on the developers. And you can do that for a few. You can't do it for all. But then when some nicely implemented ones exists, they will talk about that in the canteen. And the word will spread like that around it. But there needs to be some very nice work through examples with best practice. Also because it's so much easier to make number 3 or 4 because you can look at what number 1 and 2 did. And that needs to be there. We can't just provide a framework. We have to provide some initial implementations that make it easy to follow up.
People try to add up incentives to win something or travel or somebody didn't help.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions online?
I just wanted to make one comment. Well, one question. The comment was to say,
that's not online.
Mads is very modest, but for this work he did as part of this WP5, he won the Innovation Prize from the ENSA Neutron Instrumentation and Innovation Award, which is, I think, like the main award in the neutron community every few years. So I wanted to say also congratulations. And do you know what is the uptake of MaxDashScript? I mean, do you have an idea of how many users you have?
It's very difficult because if you look at the download statistics, that's all bots and unit tests and so on. The main indication I have is that when I go to a conference, people come up and say thank you for the software, and I imagine that for each person that has the guts to do that, there are several more that didn't. So it certainly is being used. For example, at MLZ, where they are making some virtual twins or digital twins of the instruments, they're starting to use it. At SNS, the synchrotron spallation neutron source in Oak Ridge, some of the instruments proposed for their new targeting system was Target Station 2 was designed just in a single Jupyter notebook and shown off in that way with MaxDashScript. So it's popping up here and there for sure.
Okay, well, thank you again, Mads. Very good. And now we will go with the next session. Is by Fabio Dall'Antonia. He works at XFEL. He's our Work Package 4 leader, and he is, if I get it right, data analysis project coordinator at XFEL. And Erwan is there. You don't get out of the hoop. You will talk a little bit as well, and you are head of IT, but be prepared.
Yeah. Can you hear me? This works? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Good morning, everyone. yeah, you already said I will have the honor to have the first part of this session. And on behalf of all the work package 4, even if I do not name people so nicely as Mads did before, I want to present both outcomes, adoption, and future plans of work package 4. So I've been the leader of work package 4 since 18 months roughly. Yeah, I think we need a little bit to describe what we have in order to get to the plans. And I would like to start a little bit of about the bigger picture here. If we talk about open science, as PaNOSC is inside the EOSC, this is of course about all aspects from the open data via open software up to the level of publications, right? I see PaNOSC within that more focused on the data aspect, obviously. And here we often talk about open data and about fair data. And of course, as you may be aware, this is not exactly the same, right? So findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, respectively reproducible. Then the level of this accessibility in the A, this is whether you want to have this data services and data to whatever level of or exclusivity of people. And of course, we strive to be as open as possible. I will come to that later. However, I see what work package 4 achieved is to have services for fair data analysis in the first place, and fair data analysis starting with the partners, with the research institutes and their users, and then expanding to the open. Right. I think it's time for a couple of more formal slides, just for completeness as a work package leader at the end of the project. So how was it composed in terms of contribution? So all of the major 6 partners of PaNOSC had a share here in terms of person months, ILL, European XFEL and CEREC a bit more than the others. And I would say what is also characteristic of this project is we all work together on everything, but most of the facilities had a specialty, let's say, to focus on. Of course, with ideas to take over by others. Of course, ILL was essential in producing Visa as a main platform for cloud-based data analysis. Yeah, this is not comprehensive, right? It's just to pick some highlights. ESRF has as an HDF service a whole ecosystem, I would say, around the H5 web. CEREC had a similar approach in visualizing H5 data with H5 Nuvola. Eli contributed to the portal front end. The European XFEL was also developing tools for HDF5 based data analysis, and also Jupyter integration, and ESS as well contributed software and tested services. So yeah, this is just a formal listing of what were the tasks of the project and the deliverables associated to that. That reflects already a little bit what I said. So if we talk of the remote data analysis services, the 2 main pillars of that, I would say, were remote desktop-based services where you can run GUI software, and on the other hand, the Jupyter ecosystem and notebook-based data analysis. And it was both about getting the infrastructure to enable this, but also then filling this with software tools and solutions to do so. And integrate all this in EOSC. And yeah, we are right now here at the end. It's still working on the open accessible demonstrator. But yeah, I will come to that. It's essentially the task to have both the Jupyter services and the remote desktop embedded to a cloud solution. Visa was achieved at each of the partners. The challenge here was when the project was envisioned, we had the idea of having a solution, having it all included, that we called the PaNOSC portal or PAN portal. And that would be really more than just an umbrella homepage, but really a web application underneath that would be ideally hosted federated in a federated manner, and have a data search service, a front end, and then all the microservices for remote desktop and Jupyter underneath on a cloud infrastructure. Of course, the required authentication and authorization layers. This, for pragmatic reasons, was split then, and it was split about the time when I started, because here this work package had also the characteristic of having 3 work package leaders, which was first Hans Fangohr, then Shandor Berghauser, and then myself. So also the work of my predecessors shall be acknowledged here, the good work they did. But then, of course, we said we will outsource the data search portal, which then became a collaborative project with Work Package 3, who have the API to do the search against the data catalogs and have a front end for this, and have for the other aspects of doing the analysis on cloud services, take what we already had at that point, that is the Visa solution as a platform, as it was developed by ILL and at that time already used in production by ILL. So the major outcomes of Work Package 4 here, again listed in a more graphical fashion. There is Visa, so here's a typical session in a remote desktop with software which could be, for instance, a Neutron software. We have the search portal that was brought forward in the, I would say, in this year mainly. And here contributions from Eli were done, and ESRF to link this to the API that it was developed mostly by ESS, and I will come to that connection later. There are, as I said, also the web services that are also already integrated into the respective data catalogs at the facilities, which is H5 Web, which is integrated to the ESRF data catalog, H5 Nuvola, which is integrated to the WUO at CEREC, at Electra. There have been software on, for instance, HDF5 analysis, also from our side, European XFEL, that are published in the PaNOSC software catalog, which is itself integrated into EOSC. And we brought forward infrastructures for Jupyter, and not only Jupyter, but also on a distributed computing platforms like with Slurm, Jupyter Hub, in other words. That is a screenshot from the one at DESI that is used by European XFEL. So the adoption of outcomes, this is a table that courtesy by Andy. He made this table in the context of posing questions to the LEAPS and LENS facilities on how far they would adopt the outcomes of PaNOSC. This table is cut here, that goes on, that I needed to cut for space reasons and to focus on the PaNOSC partners, which are also highlighted here, and also the columns that go into the field of Work Package 4 are also highlighted, and it's a good, maybe not surprising, but not self-evident that that really the partners really want to adopt, even if it's partly still work in progress, the Work Package 4 outcomes as such. But even more happy I'm to say that even some of the Expanse partners, most of them are also using the Jupyter Lab technology, but even Visa is work in process to be used as a production service in the future at Alba, and not seen here but Soleil. This leads me to the plans for the future. So here plans not in the sense of having an idea of a work plan within a future project. Maybe that's a bit difficult at this point, but what I think, that's quite a personal selection here, what I think is maybe not quite completed, or needs follow-up, or is worth considering. Again, from my point of view, it is not comprehensive, and it is also biased a little bit towards open data, I must say. So there will be slides for each of these points, so I won't read it out. There's some points I do not address here. Also, this is maybe a bit more formally was in Work Package 6, the open data transfer between sites, right? What I also do not mention here is an important topic of reproducibility in the Jupyter context, binder hub, etc. that I think was looked into in the first half of the project of work package 4, and then I must admit neglected a bit, but it's surely worth picking up, and I could imagine that will also be topic in within this meeting. Anyway, so talking about openness of data, so there are different levels to that. You could think of, do we need authentication, or do we allow an anonymous use of services, right? You could also think of openness, how restricted, how exclusive is a group of people that can use a service, right? I think what I learned is, for being realistic, would be to be as open as possible, but as restricted as necessary for whatever reasons, security or resources available. In terms of work package 4, our search portal is really public, anonymous access. But then if you go into services like Visa and others, there's a level of authentication, which of course also prevents misuse to some extent. And we should consider, if we want to adopt these services, how much resources do we have really to serve a large community of users, right? If we have them, it's fine to give access, but if not, at the moment there might be some limitations, right?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. I need to hurry up, right? But so the authentication frameworks, an example would be that this is a key cloak at European at DESI, European XFEL for Visa, where you could in principle use umbrella ID. Yeah, and then just as an example, that is just one scenario. There are others, I know, but I just took for convenience the one at European XFEL is, of course, at the moment, if you go from the public data portal to our data catalog and the DOI landing page, the public one will at the moment say contact us to get open data, right? What we want and what we are working on is, of course, the experience for the users being the same as for the registered users, seeing what the open data is, and importantly having a link to global. So this is worked on, but this needs careful testing, careful preparation in order to do it right. Also taking the selection of data that we want to expose into account. Then there's this triangle of data catalog, search portal, and Visa, just again an example of our open demonstrator. To make this triangle work, that the data which you find could also be as a service link to Visa would require that data is can be mapped from the catalog via the ETL process and via the mounting in Visa the same way as it is in the catalog. This is not necessarily everywhere the case at the moment, but if so, the European demonstrator example has a nice mapping of what is in basically in our metadata catalog is reflected in the Visa experiment database, and then also in the mounting. I want to stress in the remaining time really the fruitful collaboration in Visa development, not only, but in particular also now as the project needed some hurry up and came to an end. I think if we continue by chat, by contact, suggesting features and having them implemented where they make sense, then I see this as a good way to move forward and continue the collaboration in Visa. Erwan will tell more about Visa collaboration in the future, I guess. Here's just some features that were implemented lately on request and that would make Visa ready also where the facility wants to use it as an open data service, and not only for their users to have this possible. And there are some ideas how we could further facilitate this, also with session collaboration. Yeah, so my last couple of slides, numbers of users and techniques catered by the work package 4 services have a nice increase. It looks a bit like a saturation here. I must also admit that the last year is missing here yet. The use cases are, as here distributed among the facilities and published on our website, are a good example on how different techniques and scenarios are catered. And I think this is the key, right? If we want more users, it's about PR, it's about promoting it, but it's also about finding the right connection to use cases. And often use cases can be grouped into domains, right? And this means that I think to have the open data selected and grouped into domains would make this such services more attractive for users. So in structural biology domain, we have the protein database, which publishes the end product, that are the structures, but also the crystallographic data. ESRF has the human organ atlas for tomography data, right? And there's, to mention one more, is the CXI database, which has crystallograph and single particle imaging data sets. I mentioned that because some of these data are in our open data collection from European XFEL. And yeah, for facilities that have these large petabyte amount of data, it is really, in my view, it makes sense to pre-select a little bit for openness what is really relevant and interesting to the users, and in case even prepare that with pre-processing. That's my opinion. Yeah, and with that, I thank you for your attention. Again, if you wonder why I do not acknowledge people, there were too many maybe, but really I appreciate the work, not only in the work package 4 of everyone, but PaNOSC in general, and also how I was welcomed getting into the project halfway in between. That was a very nice experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio. And now we'll go with Erwan, that is head of IT at ILL. And then we'll have questions for both of them. And because we're late, we'll have less time for the coffee break. So sorry.
Hi, everyone. Okay, you have to master the clip. Okay, so I'm Erwan Gall. I'm working at ILL, and I will give you an overview of the visa project. So I have the zap here. Okay, I mastered that. Okay, so I will try to do fast to have some coffee. So 4 points, I will go right into it. Visa is ready for production. You can use it in any facility. If I take the same table than Fabio and do a focus on visa, you can see that there is a lot of people already using it in production, especially at ILL, of course, since 2 years now. And it's in deployment in some of other facilities and planned for the last one. At ILL, I will do a focus to convince you that it's now ready for production. Today, it's already a standard. A lot of scientists can't work without visa. They're asking for new features. They ask why it's not going faster than that. They have some new demands and so on. So it's really become a standard. To prove it, we have some figures. During the last 3 years, of course, in the first column, we didn't have visa. And we just took the consumption of the RAM. And what is really important is the last year, because we don't have any cycle at ILL. We are in a long shutdown, so scientists are not officially working on experiments, just working on data. And you see that the usage is even more than expected. So there is a bad situation about that we have to buy some new hardware. So it's kind of costly, but at least it worked very well. And on the project, so that's the first part. That's where we are today. The new features, what we have done recently. The roadmap was piloted by PaNOSC, so we only answer on the needs of PaNOSC. We allow the search of open data. So everything around open data, we have no link on the data portal. When you search, you are able to click, and in some configuration, you can access directly to an instance with the right experiment selected. On the infrastructure part for the IT engineers in the room, we have made some great improvements regarding the cloud provider. We are working at ILL with OpenStack, for example. It's an old version. We are not confident to update it. So we decide to install a new version and to connect the both to Visa to allow slowly to migrate different instances. We also have the capacity, you know, to extend the time allowed for scientists to work on an instance. For example, at IL they have maybe 15 days to work on an instance. After that, the instance is deleted. Sometimes it's not enough, so now they just have to do some clicks to ask for an extension. They don't have to communicate by emails. And we have some user management on. It's an ongoing work, but still it's present right now. You can ask for new accounts, and the admin will allow users to connect. We have limited guest roles and some quota by users. The quota is the number of instances you are able to create. So a scientist with multiple experiments can have more instances, for example. And the future, the next roadmap will be defined by ILL, because we are working at ILL on that, but it's not something that we want to define on ourselves. But today what we have planned is to work on different things. The first one is WebEx, and I will ask some help to show a video of it, if possible. So WebEx is a change of how Visa works for people who are already using Visa. You find there's this one. Okay, the left one is the video with the current solution. And as you see, when you move a window or something, you have some artifacts and so on. And the new one, the new solution with WebEx, it's not the case anymore. We also decrease the CPU usage with the new version. So it's a great work from Jamie and Stuart on that. So as you can see, the user experience will be smoother and really helpful to work on the day-to-day basis on Visa. Thank you. So if you have any question about WebEx, Stuart is in the room. So the second thing we plan to do is to work on a voice solution to increase the collaboration between scientists. When you work on an experiment, you sometimes have all the time, I should say, you have the needs to talk with people, and doing a Zoom call or even a phone call is sometimes a pain. So we decide to integrate that in the solution directly. When you start an instance, start sharing an instance, you can speak directly. We don't have the needs of GPU today at IL, but we still know that it will come at one point. So we will try to provide some solution to support GPU out of the box. And finally, the last idea we have and we want to develop is a file download and upload system directly from the browser, because you have a complete operating system on the browser, but sometimes you want just to download one file locally or upload a file. So we'll about that. Okay, PaNOSC ends. It's today and tomorrow, but Visa will stay and the pool too, I hope, since we want people to be able to work remotely. So the question is now how we'll continue after PaNOSC to provide the best software possible for everyone. And there is some different ideas we want to share. The first thing is that we will not be able to handle all the development at IL, of course. The second one is that during the next months, during the following months, we will continue to support. So if any facility needs demonstration, technical support or anything, don't hesitate to communicate directly with us, to send me an email, for example, and we'll try to help as much as we can for a few months until we find a solution to work together, to still work together. There is an initiative of Majid on MOU that we will discuss tomorrow on a parallel session. So I incline people that are interested to come, of course. And we are really keen to this initiative. So thank you. And third, we are also working at ILL to find third-party companies to help facilitate lower laboratories to install Visa, for example, not to ask us to help on technical support. There is some companies are maybe able to learn visa and help your different facilities. So that's it. I did it fast.
Very fast.
Thank you.
Very good and very clear. Nice presentation, Erwan. So I'm afraid we are not just yet in the coffee break because we have some online questions, and then everybody here in the room will be able to make some difficult questions, I hope, because the presentation was very
Fabio,
nice
maybe.
and smooth. So we need a bit of a challenge here. So Nicoletta, what are the questions that we have?
So we have a first question from Sophie Servan from DESI. She asks, how can we tag our data so that the domain-specific catalogs know they should harvest only the data sets relevant to them? COVID-19 data portal, CXIDB, do we know already?
Yes, I think one way too is that's already done is that the catalogs tag data by experimental technique, right? That we already have also in the context of the search portal, and I see that as an immediate solution to group by that. I'm not saying that, I mean, integrating the existing databases like CXIDB is maybe interesting, but not what I had in mind. I had more in mind to use the technology that we have in terms of search portal front end and search portal, and yeah, build a sub service, let's say, just for that domain. So, yeah.
I think that we have a question from Desi. Hold on a sec, grab the mic.
No, it's not from Daisy, it's from Expanse. So I know that tomorrow there will be this discussion on the MOU for visa. Nevertheless, is there a certain incentive from ILL to have such a collaboration, or are you just taking it if it will happen, or do you have some kind of, do you want visa to become more public or more popular? So I really need to understand what your take on this is.
The first thing that I have to say is that it's my personal strategy, not the ILL one. Even if the management support that, they can change at any time, of course. The main idea is to as you say, to make it more public, to give it more visibility, because Visa is a great software, and if we want it to survive, we have to fight with other software. Today, the competition is more on Microsoft and their cloud solution that they provide to other facilities. And if we want to fight versus them, we can't at ILL. It's not possible. So we have to adopt it in a global way and to work on it together to be sure that it answers the real thing we want to solve, the real problem we want to solve. So the main idea today is not to do that at ILL alone, to work with you, because alone we will die. The solution will die in few years. So of course we want to do that, and we really thanks Majid for the initiative to put that in motion.
Just as a warning, I mean, we did this at DAISY with some other software in the past for WLCG, and in the end, all this MOU, and this is very nice, but the load will be on you. The load, the major load will be on you.
Yeah. We
have just as a warning.
We have that in mind. Actually, Ludovic is also on the room, and we have that in mind. We since Jamie left, it's a huge loss, of course, and Stuart is more focused on the ILL demands today. So we will, the management agree on that. We will have a new position for this work with other facilities, and we know that we have to work more than expected.
Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have questions online? Well, I think that we deserve a coffee. So thank you very much again, Erwan and Fabio. So with this, I let the floor to Jean-Francois, and I ask everybody that has not sit down to please do it quietly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordi. So it's not everything we have done in WP6. I'm just focusing on data transfer, AI, and deployment of Visa on the point of view of the infrastructure. So in terms of data transfer, we had initially 3 use cases that we wanted to explore in the scope of PaNOSC. One, I will talk just after, is specific to one facility. This was the archive, archiving the data of the facility to another center. The second one is very specific to EOSC. This is, I will explain it a bit more after. This is when a user wants to use a compute facility, which is hosted by any provider, and has his data located on the repository of a research infrastructure. How could he transfer the data between both of them, and if possible, transparently? I will explain what it means. The third one is very well known from all of us. This is the typical case: a user open scientist, after the end of an experiment, want to transfer the data home to his own infrastructure, to his own computer. So the first one was the case of the archiving. It was, we set up a pilot. This was between ILL as the research infrastructure where the data are produced, and STFC, STFC as the archive center. The protocols and the storage are different. And we have gone through different technical solutions with the colleagues from STFC. So we have explored FTS and grid FTP for the transfer. So FTS is a solution which has been developed in the high energy physics community, very specific to their use case. Could we use it there? Yes, we can use it. This is a multi-protocol data transfer, but this is mostly a scheduler. In the background, as protocol, we set up grid FTP on the ILL side and S3 interface on STFC side. We tried also Ruccio on top of the FTS. So Ruccio is a sort of, you can see it as a system to put in place permanent workflow. FTS and Ruccio is what it's called the data lake in terms of escape wording, escape the other cluster project. But all of this was a lot of infrastructure and setup for a use case that was relatively simple. And we ended up in production with our clone, because the main need behind was really to have a sort of clone of the data. So our clone is an open source project as well. This is multi-protocol, and it's a sort of Swiss knife for data transfer. You can speak very different protocols, from HTTP to specific proprietary protocols. So the pilot has been completed, and we have shut it down now at the end of PaNOSC. The second use case was the transfer of data by research infrastructure users. And the difficulties we had at the beginning of PaNOSC is to find a way. If you remember, in 2017, 2018, we started to have very, very large data from what we were used to have. So typically data sets of 5, 10 terabytes, which for the users and our user community, which is very diverse, was really a problem. So we are looking for a way a tool that could be extremely easy to use by the users. So we don't want to have help desk call every time they use it. Extremely reliable, and something that we, without too much tricks and difficulties on the client side, but also on the infrastructure side. The pilot was ESRF as a research infrastructure, where we have a storage based on GPFS, and it's important because in the community, what we tend to do is to put the authorization on the data directly on the POSIX file systems. And that's something which is important in this scope. We have looked to 2 different solutions. One from IBM, this is a commercial one called Aspera. One from the community, which is called Globus. It's not open source anymore. It's free to use, but you can take support. We had difficulties with both of them on GDPR, on the protection of personal data. We had to make some adaptation in the contracts. And currently the state is not now, Globus has become more or less a standard. As soon as a facility has large data set that users need to transfer, usually or in the community, we have a Globus endpoint. This is good that it become a standard because it means that we don't have to train the users every time. We don't have to explain. And what you can see on the top is last year, as soon as we started in production, so it's there, Globus, it has been used. With some transfer at some point, roughly 20 terabytes per day, which is not nothing. And it has been immediately adopted by the users. Aspera is interesting as well. The difficulties with Aspera we face is the cost. The cost model is quite impressive and difficult to handle for research infrastructure of our size. But we have seen in the course of the project many users, I would say client, because it's used in this industry, working with Aspera. So typically at ESRF, what we have done, because we learn about it, is that we set up clients for these users. So people can connect on a machine which has been prepared for that, and they can initiate the transfer from the ESRF. There is more and more demands for push solutions. And this is something quite common in the difficult in the communities, the diversity of users and the solution they have. You, as a research infrastructure, have to cope with that. The time where we could decide we have this solution, SSH-based, AirSync, things like that, is over. It still exists, but it's over. We have more and more users coming with their constraints. I have my university which has decided to move the storage, the university storage, to Dropbox. How do you work with that? How do you transfer data? Do we need to transfer data? And we have more and more cases like that with something that looks strange for us. But the learning curve we had with tools like Aspera, Airclone are helping us today. The third one was something new for us. This is something I call service composability at the level of EOSC. This is exactly the premise of EOSC. You can have providers providing compute resources, and you have other providers providing the data. Our user could work with the two services together, because at the end for him, this is a single service he wants. So in more technical terms, this is the transfer of data from a research infrastructure to another data center where you know few things about. The transfer ideally should be transparent. User should just specify the data he wants to analyze, and it should happen in his background. Ideally, the result of the processing could be stored on the AI repository. And we should authenticate the users with the EOSC AI Federation. I will go quickly on that slide. This is a slide you have seen many times. The typical workload or use in the community is that one. You have an archive located on the premise of the community, of the facility, and you have some services offered by the facility to their users. And this is typically what we have seen with Visa or Jupyter Hub or what we have developed up to now. Here we are talking about the adaptation of these repositories to be able to provide compute services or other services on different premises. And in this pilot, we were working with AGI and we have tried different solutions for that. So I won't go into too much detail about it. We have tried again FTS. We have tried and we succeed with one for the pilot at least, which is One Data. One Data was proposed and is proposed by AGI under the name AGI Data Hub. Okay, thank you. The difficulties is currently, this is not the main use case for any communities. So nothing was ready when we started to look to it. The scalability is a real problem. We can succeed with solutions like One Data, but in One Data you have a central catalog for all files, which does not scale or will not scale very clearly. We have all billions of files, and this is moving files, new files coming from the instruments, file generated by the processing, files that will be dropped, that will be moved to the archive. It's extremely difficult to work that way. And the integration, as we have not really standards in terms of data repositories, the integration is also quite difficult. Today, the best option is really that the users take care of the data transfer with the tool of the community. So we've seen Globus. We can think about Globus, SSH based like AirSync or SCP or whatever, or even HTTP from when the data are not too, the size of the data set is not too high, and let the users do. In the future, we want something a bit better than that. So in my view, there is a real need for a global approach where typically, we'll talk briefly about AI just after. In terms of AI, we have this global approach. There was a project with a survey that has been filled in by all the communities where we have worked with the people working on the specification, and at the end we have something that could work. Today this job has not been done. So it has to be done, and there is a new project where probably it will happen. Something that's also very interesting is the fact that up to now, when we talk about data transfer, we know in the community, we talk about user-driven. User is on the web browser, user is using these tools and things like that. Tomorrow we want something, very likely we'll need something which is machine actionable, meaning by specifying the data, it could be transferred from one point to the other. And we identify data in the community by minting DOIs. This is the standard. But currently the metadata for DOI does not give you information about the endpoint, where a machine could find the data. Which protocol could it be used? We have the landing page, but that's not enough. So there is a work currently, and it is followed with Paul Miller from DAISY very closely. He has developed some prototypes. But there is a work now taken by DataSite to update the metadata schema. So the next one, 4.5, will provide such attributes where we can start working in a standard way with data transfer automated by machines and workflows. I will stop on that. I have just a few minutes. Extremely quick. So in terms of AI, we have worked with Jean all along the project. So Umbrella ID or Community AI has been integrated, or is supported in terms of proxy. I won't go into the technical detail, by EduTeams, so a solution provided by Jean. The really good part of it is that we have moved an infrastructure to something ready for EOSC that was prepared in the ARC project. We benefited from lots of functionalities by doing that. Before PaNOSC, we had only SAML v2 for working. We needed OAuth and OpenID, and we got them now. Okay, the metadata management, many aspects, And the good thing is that in October 2022, we were amongst the first to be part of the EOSC Federation, EOSC AI Federation. In practice, what does it mean? It means that there is technical interoperability at the level of the proxies, and there is some policies where all agree on it. In practice for a user, it means that if you want to open a service to the whole EOSC users, communities, you can use, in our case, Umbrella ID to access these services without needing to create a new account. So this is important, but this is probably not really the end. I will skip the next one on AI. Where do we stand and what do we have to do? We have worked also on the visa deployment from a point of view of the infrastructure. I won't enter into too much detail, but for people working on infrastructure, network, servers, HPC solutions in the infrastructure, visa is one more solution. So how could we make it sustainable? How could we, by working together, find solution where the cost of introducing visa is not major? I have just 1 minute, so I won't... Sorry. Less. So I will just focus on the software deployment. We have looked, if you look to the software in the community, there is more than 100 software per research infrastructure, and probably more than that, 150 is recorded in the software catalog, which is probably even more than that. We have difficulties when we set up this software, when we install this software on the systems, especially in the case of visa, where we want to cover the whole community of users. We have worked again with Escape. I did not mention it initially, but we had contact all along the project with the other science clusters. In that case, it was Escape. And we ended up with recommendations that we are currently trying to deploy. It's to package the software in lightweight containers. We have selected Singularity Obtainers. This is the new name, it's hidden. I know that for ILL, for instance, it's done. Visa is fully, the software provided inside Visa at ILL are all inside containers. ESRF, we are exploring that. We have done some of them, not all of them. We're in discussion with the software developers. And CVMFS. CVMFS is a new way to provide the software to the machines. Usually in our infrastructure, this is NFS, so very local. And we wanted to have, by using CVMFS, we have the possibility to make it also available across the internet. Very quickly, if we look here for perspective and future, there is room for working more together. If we have an appropriate trust framework between us, we can imagine not having to install anymore the software on the different machine, on the HPC, the Slurm clusters, but just pick up using CVMFS software that has been prepared by other people that we trust, and typically RI between us. An example is XFEL that we have installed recently. XFEL has been developed at European XFEL, DAISY, don't know exactly, but the software, the developers has provided a Singularity image, and we could put it on the CVMFS. We will be able to use it immediately without any other work. I would like to stop there to keep.
Thank you very much, Jean-Francois.
It's important for me.
I have to say that you got saved from me calling security by the skin of your teeth, so keeping it tight. So thank you very much for your talk, and more importantly, thank you very much for all the work that you have done in the EOSC integration for PaNOSC. That's great. We don't have time for questions because you overrun a little bit. And Rolf, I invite you to grab Jean-Francois later if you don't mind. I'm so sorry about that. And now we have Andrew McCluskey, that is instrument data scientist for the neutron reflectometry at the ESS. Oh my God, that's so difficult to say. It's a very bright guy. So he's Work Package 8 leader. He took over from Thomas Roth, at ESS, and he will explain us what has been going on with the e-learning platform and the collaboration with Expanse in the training platform as well. So here you go.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, and thanks for letting me come and talk to you guys, I guess, and tell you all about what we've been doing in the training catalog and the e-learning platform kind of during Expanse, and then I'll try and at the end talk a bit about the long term, or what's going to happen next when PaNOSC ends, essentially. It's the first time I've been in Grenoble for like 6 years, so I'm really pleased to be back, and I got to go run up the Bastille this morning, which was really enjoyable. But if I fall down, that's why, because my legs are very sore. So Work Package 8 was focused on e-learning, and it kind of had a sister project in Expanse of Work Package 5, I believe, which was focused on the training catalog. Work Package 8 had people from all over, and I've tried to make sure I got everyone that was involved in different meetings and different projects, but if I missed you out, I apologise. It ended up being a lot of people at ESS because there was a lot of stuff related to infrastructure, and as you'll see, we have compute resource running on ESS infrastructure, which is why we've got the entire of the DST, the Data Systems Technologies team. So what was the point? Why were we doing this? Well, alongside all this development of software and tooling and infrastructure, we wanted to also help to train people to use them. It's all very good if we develop these tools, but if no one understands how to use them, then they're not going to use them, essentially. And this kind of links into the question that was being asked of Mads in terms of these digital twinnings of the McStass models. How do you engage the instrument scientists to use them? Well, you train them about the benefits of it. So what we were aiming to do was, these are kind of 3 bullet points that were taken from a original proposal, is the development and delivery of an e-learning platform that can be used across photon and neutron facilities, staff training and specific staff training in order to prepare material for the e-learning platform. So that's almost like pedagogical training for our facility staff, which is not a very common thing. It's very common in universities, but not so common in the facilities. And also developing user training for the PaNOSC facilities and services. So I've just realized I can see it. I don't need to turn around. So this is I've broken that into 3 blocks. So essentially we've got stuff related to the platform, we've got stuff related to the staff training, and we've got stuff related to the user training. As a point, actually, before I kind of get into the content, is this might be a very short talk, because I thought I was only meant to talk for 15 minutes. So maybe we could have had some questions before me, but we'll find out. So the platform, we did have a platform within the neutron scattering community, which was called eNeutrons before the PaNOSC project started. And a large part of the PaNOSC project was to, one, diversify that, to enable it to support the photon community as well, but also to bring it under more sustainable, maintainable software infrastructure. Try and simplify the tooling, make it more usable for ourselves as scientists trying to create material for it, but also try and make sure that we don't have to use an FTE essentially to keep it up when it's necessary. We also wanted to add additional functionality. So the original eNeutrons was essentially just a Moodle. Those of you that remember Moodle from universities and stuff like that. With a media wiki built in, and we wanted to extend that functionality because, as it's been mentioned quite a few times, Jupyter is becoming a more and more pervasive tool within the kind of scientific infrastructure, and so we wanted to have the ability to launch Jupyter notebooks from the e-learning platform, such as to allow content creators, people creating training material, to integrate this programmatic stuff from their Jupyter notebooks into the training. And we also wanted to try and get better engagement with the community. eNeutrons was really quite focused on the neutron scattering community, and actually quite focused on the University of Copenhagen, because that was the people that first developed it. And so we wanted to engage the more of the community at large. And I think that we've actually managed to achieve all of these aspects. So this is what the training platform looks like now. So this is available online. If you go to e-learning.pan-training.eu, you can create an account and start to investigate the different courses that we've got on there. We've had very good engagement from a variety of different facilities to create content. In particular, ISIS Neutron Immune Source has created a whole bunch of training material, in part due to the fact that they typically have one year in industry student each year working on user training, and usually they work on the user training within this e-learning platform now. And so you can see that that's actually where this introduction to muon spectroscopy course comes from. And this is just a plot that we put together from the Moodle data. showing the kind of cumulative, so this is cumulative logins starting from January 2020. And on the green is the cumulative course enrollments. So once you log into the e-learning platform, you can then enroll yourself on courses. So this is just to show the kind of usage that we've got. And you can see there's some big spikes at a variety of different places. And one of the big spikes before this course enrollments was actually we had a train the trainers workshop that I'll mention in the next slide. And so it's just to show over the past 2 years, we've had over 16,000 people logging into or 16,000 logins to the platform, and over about 800 total course enrollments. At the moment, there's about 900 active users with accounts on the e-learning platform. So we've managed to get a really good engagement from a broad range of the community. So that was the platform. Now on to the staff training box. So the Train the Trainers workshop that I mentioned in the previous slide was an activity in order to try and train us as scientists at facilities, or as software developers, or however you identify as yourself at facilities, trying to train us to create more pedagogical material that's going to help users learn about whatever it is you're trying to teach them better. And so this was held during the height of COVID, essentially, or the height of the Omicron variant, essentially. And so it was held remotely. So we had a couple of days in February and then a couple of days in March. And in between, we tried to create material that we could then have assessed by members of the faculty at the Copenhagen Department of Science Education. And this is just a pie chart showing the distribution of the participants. So we had quite a lot of participants from ESS and also other PaNOSC projects, but then a huge variety from different expands, including the majority actually coming from ISIS. And that makes sense considering they have a kind of this vested interest where they always have a year in industry student developing this training material. And in addition to this Train the Trainers workshop that was organised and was actually a really big success and resulted in a lot of new courses on the training material on the e-learning platform, we also have some courses on the platform that aim to introduce sort of pedagogical aspects. So these were prepared by Stella, whose surname I can't pronounce. It's Belgian, it's very difficult. Or at least for me as a Scot, it's very difficult. But Stella prepared quite a lot of material in order to show you how to create good material for students to interact with. So this was quite a nice one about creating a video mini lecture. So that would be a video where showing you how to have like slides appearing and you appear in a little box in the corner, and how to create all this material, such as to create engaging content. So staff training, now user training. So what have we achieved in terms of the user training? Well, we have over 50 e-learning courses. This is a big increase from what we had when we were under the e-Neutrons banner. And these come in a wide variety of different types. So we've got the University of Copenhagen Neutron Scattering course, which was actually kind of inherited from the e-learning from the e-Neutrons platform. We have the Swednes PhD training small angle scattering course, which is a Swedish PhD training. Essentially, it's like a bunch of universities in Sweden have come together to try and train students in neutron scattering. We've got some courses from the ISIS virtual reflectometry training course. That's a typo. We've got something from the University of Delft on neutrons, X-rays, and positrons. And those four that I've highlighted so far are all they're all focused on neutrons and X-rays, and they're all kind of within the wheelhouse that we all in PaNOSC are coming from. One of the ones that I found was really interesting was that there's this photosynthesis and energy course that's run out of the University of Amsterdam. The person that created that is not a partner in PaNOSC. They found out about the e-learning platform. They wanted to use these Jupyter notebooks in their university course. And they got in contact, and we managed to work together in order to enable that, such that the Jupyter notebooks that they're running in their course, their students running on, is actually running on the infrastructure at ESS. And so there's a whole variety of different courses, and they're all the majority of them are designed either to be that you work through them in your own time and you kind of learn as you do, or they link with an in-person course, so they're kind of like an active learning component of an in-person course. For example, the photosynthesis and energy course is specifically that. It goes along with a lecture course at the university. The last one I'm going to mention is this. So it was called Materials Science at European Large-Scale Infrastructures Using Open and Fair Data, or the PaNOSC Summer School. So this was a deliverable as a part of the original grant proposal, was to organise this summer school where we highlight the role of the PaNOSC facilities and also the services that have been developed as a part of PaNOSC as a part of a summer school, which we held at Ely Alps back in September. Now, for many of you, September might not be summer anymore, but trust me, Hungary is really warm, and particularly warm in September, I found. And so this is a photo from the summer school. So we had a whole bunch of students come from all over. There was participants from DAISY, ESRF, a variety of different universities in Germany, students from the local university in Szeged in Hungary, and we all spent a week learning about different applications of PaNOSC services and facilities to materials science. So there was lectures on using lasers for materials science, using quasi-elastic neutron scattering, and spectroscopy from ESRF, as well as introducing aspects such as data management plans and all these important fundamental PaNOSC things that are probably I'm out of my depth talking about as a hard scientist. And so this was some of our feedback, which I was actually really pleased with. So we following the summer school, Nicoletta very kindly sent out a feedback form for the students to fill in, and we got really nice feedback. A very well organised summer school with clear talks. The student felt like they'd got a lot of information, and what was important because it was to use this hand-on training. And because during the summer school, we actually used the Jupyter Notebook infrastructure that was available through the e-learning platform. So the students were working, solving problems in Python during the summer school, and had help from a variety of different experts. I use this to refer to myself, not to my colleagues. And so it all went, it seemed really well. And so with that, that's me fulfilled my 3 boxes. I hope you feel that we think we've done a good job in Work Package 8. I hope I've shown that to you. But one of the things I also want to highlight, as I mentioned at the start, is that we worked complementarily to a work package in Expands, and that's Work Package 5, I believe. That was focused on the development of this training catalog. And due to the complementarity, we actually ended up collaborating really closely, having weekly meetings where we made sure to stay in touch. And it's actually resulted in quite a few different achievements that are really promising. So one is that we've now got, if you create an e-learning course on the e-learning platform, it automatically gets loaded into the training catalog from Expands. There's also the ability, so if you go to the training catalog from Expands, there's a register new content button, and if you work through that workflow, as you click yes and no to different questions, it may be the case you end up with the answer, you should create an e-learning course, go here to do that. And finally, one of the things that I think is the biggest one is that we're actually now under a shared homepage with kind of a shared brand identity, essentially. So if you go to pantraining.eu, you'll find the training catalog, but also links to the e-learning platform, and we're all kind of under this same masthead. And so the last thing that I was meant to, well, the whole purpose of this talk was what's going to happen next. That was the title, I guess, but I wanted to just give you that brief overview. So what's going to happen next with the e-learning platform? Of course, PaNOSC is ending. We're all sad about that. But we want to continue sustaining the e-learning platform. It's a valuable tool, both for the community and for ESS alone. And so in that vein, the e-learning platform is planned to come under the kind of ownership. I use this because it is still a community thing. It's still for everyone to take advantage of. But it will come under the ownership of the scientific web applications team at ESS. So that's people that know them, Frederick and Max and a variety of others over at ESS. Now that has a variety of benefits, both to ESS, but also to PaNOSC, or to the e-learning platform as a whole. So it ensures that we're going to have long-term support and maintenance. Now, as Mads alluded to, it means it's long-term maintenance and support. We don't have necessarily the funding to keep doing lots and lots of development on it, but we'll ensure that it's stable, we'll ensure it's maintained. 5 minutes. That's impressive. I mean, this is the last slide, so I can take 5 minutes on this.
Rolf wants to make questions. You didn't do it before, so.
So it also means we could do things like take advantage of complementary developments. Obviously, ESS is a facility that's going to be coming online at some point. And there's developments happening that we need to do for our users in order to facilitate them to do analysis and reduction. And those developments are actually complementary to the e-learning platform. Things like being able to activate Jupyter Notebooks directly from from a SciCat instance, for example, we can take advantage of that in the e-learning platform because we want to transfer some information, say, from the e-learning platform to the Jupyter Notebook. There's, oh yeah, one of the other things that we're going to bring in, because we're kind of now under an ESS banner, is trying to introduce policies related to the e-learning platform to ensure that people don't create courses and then retire, and then the course just sits there and all the links break over time. So we're going to have policies to ensure that. The other thing that I was told to mention, like via Slack 5 minutes ago, is so Thomas Rod is currently at the EOSC thing that's nearby, and he said that he wants to try and apply for some EOSC money to try and extend this functionality, in particular focusing on the Jupyter integration to make that more useful to people trying to create content. And also just to say we're open, if anyone wants to create an e-learning course, go check out the what we have at the moment, and then get in touch. And actually on that, you can get in touch via this email address. So either my email address or the kind of admin email address, or if you don't want to use email, I'm going to definitely be watching the England-Wales game, go Wales, at 8 o'clock in a pub. So you can come and find me there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I propose that we go with the questions for Andrew first, and then we will go back to Rolf and anyone else that wanted to make a question to Jean-Francois, but couldn't do it. So do we have any questions online for Andrew? No, but we have questions on site. So I'll bring the microphone to Mr. Dimpa.
Thank you very much. Yes, and thank you very much for this nice presentation. Similar to the previous presentations, I'm wondering to which extent your work has been brought up one level and being onboarded to EOSC. Is it visible on the EOSC portal?
There is, on the EOSC portal, I know because I had an email back and forth for about 3 days to get this to happen. I managed to get a little item that does represent both the PAN training course, I believe, which was sorted by Oliver Cool, and one for the e-learning platform. So it's available on the marketplace, I think is the vocabulary
Exactly.
used. So it is visible there, but anything beyond that is probably beyond my pay grade.
Because you're retired.
Hopefully. I'll retire and just go run up the Bastille every day.
Okay, we have one question more from Andy. Anyone here? Okay.
No, very nice talk and very impressive, I think, what is happening, because getting the learning going in this kind of community, which is doesn't have this culture of making these training courses, is very impressive. What is a question to you, but also I'm hoping someone's in the audience. Samia, did Samia arrive? Yes, yeah. So I'm sorry to expose you, but Samia, as I've understood, is in charge of the LEAPS. There's a work package in LEAPS for training. Now, I was wondering, how do you, and maybe Samia would like to comment as well, how do you see bringing on like a larger community than just saying, well, it's open now for anyone to use? But is there a way one could imagine bringing on all of the LEAPS facilities as adopting it, to try and get them to adopt this?
So my instinct on that is twisting people's arms often doesn't work. It's a nice idea, but in actuality, you'll often end up with just alienating people. So what we need to do is we need to have, it's similar to what Maz's point was, of getting people that are keen creating material. For example, ISIS has been very good on that. And then showing that material, showing that functionality. So for example, I presented the e-learning platform at No Bugs earlier in the year and got some interest in that because people saw the functionality and saw the utility. I think forcing all LEAPS facilities to use this consistently for their e-learning, for their training, might be a bit of a dangerous game.
Yeah, that is true. But on the other hand, I see already new proposals coming in where it seems like the proposers are not aware of this. So through ignorance, they will develop a new platform.
Yes.
And then we sort of defeat the purpose.
And this is one of the things, it's more about advertising, I guess. And for example, the talk at No Bugs was related to that and trying to engage the community to develop material.
On the same, exactly, yeah. On the same track. I mean, how should this, and what would be the best way promoting your work, making sure it is taken up, known by everybody, and then taken up? Because to me, it seems that most of the people don't know that this exists, and that's really a pity.
Yeah, so the way to ensure uptake and kind of advertise, there's a couple of different, so one is trying to tell people about it, going to conferences, advertising it, telling people about the utility of it, but also making use of it. So when people use, so ICES, for example, in their muon training course, is starting to use the e-learning platform because they've developed all this material for it. Next year, we're hoping to have a summer school at the DMSC and of ESS focused on data, actually kind of inspired by our experience with the PaNOSC summer school, where we're going to use the e-learning platform for that. And so there's methods of word of mouth, but there's also interacting with Leaps, getting it advertised on and things like that. I don't think forcing anyone to do anything is going to work, but advertisement. We're in touch with ENSA, so Henry Renaud. I put the U in the wrong part. Gave a talk at the that ESS ILL user meeting about the role of ENSA, and they talked specifically about training, and we're actually in contact with him now to try and engage him to make ENSA take advantage of it as well. Or else I can't hear you.
Hi, yes. Surely there's a role for user offices here. They're the ones who have the contact with users. So surely getting the training portal through the user office, and letting the user office people point to the platform, the training platform.
That's potentially one of the benefits that I didn't include in this slide, is that the scientific web applications team is responsible for user office at ESS, and therefore has the necessary contacts within places like ISIS or ILL or wherever in order to help engage that collaboration.
So I think it's a very good idea to promote, to show this to the people, but the people, so one thing that you can do showing what is there, what is available, is that the people know about that. But the other thing that you need, we need, is to help the people to do that.
Yep.
Because even if you have some material, I'm talking about that because I did a course on that. So you need assistance. So you need people that helps you, and you need even some resources to do it.
Yep.
So probably, I don't know, is a European platform like this one that could be a candidate for a more general European platform should have some kind of resources inside, a group working there that will help you, and even receive money for the courses that they publish. Because this is really the way to that it would work. Because you cannot grow up with the free time of the people that
Yep.
You provide a platform, but you don't provide a service in the sense that you don't help the people to do that.
So this,
I have to say that we got a lot of services from you, with good contact with some staff, and so we are happy with that. But it's because we are inside, we know about that, we are, welcome to do that. But in general, it's difficult to find this help.
yeah, and this is a problem, especially with PaNOSC funding ended, is that we don't have funding to support users to create material. We will continue to do it in kind of when we have time, and particularly myself and Peter Waldendrup. But this is exactly why we want to try and get some of the more of the EOSC, 1.1, something like that, funding? Well, not close enough. Try funding in addition to better integrate the Jupyter hub and things like that, but also to help users create material, because the support that's there without having someone to do it, having the funding to do it, is very difficult, and especially now that it's going to sit within ESS and not be necessarily funded.
Okay, we have one last question.
On that point, is there any information on the data stewards that are hired by the centers in PaNOSC? Because in terms of long-term sustainability, they would be the people ideally placed to keep developing this material on the platform, but that only happens if they're there.
I don't think I can answer that question. That may be a question for someone else. I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Oh, Patrick's really keen.
Okay.
It's to Rudolf.
Oh, it's to Rudolf. Cool, I can take us off.
You can take that off. So
Thank you, everyone.
you try to torture him with how do we get this on the European level? Because there's a lot of competition now. Who will have the final European platform for training? Yeah. So what can we do to help him?
Excuse me.
I would be surprised that there would be something like one could call the European platform. It will be a number of independent platforms like this one, which are available for the communities. But the point here of onboarding is to make it visible on the upper level to people who are not only, I mean, already it's a problem within the community because I think most of our community does not know that this exists, and that's a pity. But even one level above, it should be visible. And then you have a good argument for sustainability. I mean, it's a catch-22. The more users you have, the more support you get from the lab managements, but also from the European Commission to sustain what has been done. So I don't think that we will see a single platform, but a collection of platforms available on the EOSC.
That we need a science platform. Maybe it's just a distribution system and not so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Andrew. Well done. And now we have the question that we have waited for so long. Rolf, here it is.
Yeah, so Jean-Francois, you mentioned machine actionable transfer of data between centers and augmenting dataset metadata in order to enable that. My question is, are you aware of fair digital objects? There has been the conference in October, the first conference on fair digital objects. And at least to my perception, that is an upcoming standard to make data machine actionable in general. And it might be worth to look into that and to align with the standards that they develop in order to be compatible to what is coming as standards.
And Jean-Francois will answer very briefly.
Briefly, I didn't follow this route, and this is something to look at for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll move on into the next session. If I remember well, is Tobias, Richter, and Massimiliano Novelli. We have a question online as well. This is very popular, Andrew. You rock.
It is a question for Jean-Francois, actually, from John Halliwell.
Well, almost got it right.
So the question is, for use of some research infrastructures, namely the ones who don't issue a DOI for a dataset or experiment, transfer of the data home and then across to Zenodo is done for the datasets, finally underpinning the publication, and which cites those Zenodo DOIs. What is your opinion of that rather pragmatic choice by the user, but which duplicates large datasets with an accompanying climate change overhead? Would you like to come here and read it?
No, I can answer from there. This is a problem, the duplication. Are we really talking about the same data? If the data analysis and the processing has been done at the facility using Visa, for instance, then the obvious choice is that the data are available from the facility data repository. But it means that most of us have focused on acquisition data, raw data up to now, and we need the transition, which is happening, to also take care of result of processing.
Okay, thank you. And let's go with Massimiliano. No introductions, you introduce yourself, I'm so sorry. Let's go. Let's get to business.
All right. My name is Max. Let's make it shorter. So I'm part of the scientific web application team at ESS, and I joined a year and some ago, a few months, and then I've been tasked with the federated search. So first thing that we did, of course, was trying to push out our knowledge or what we acquired. And, you know, it has been done through the DOI landing page, and then we register through the B2Find and OpenAir. But this is, they are coming to us harvesting the information. So of course we want to give the user the power, supposedly, to search for our data, and thanks to work package 4 and strict collaboration between and lots of sessions, brainstorming session, we came up with this. Many people to thanks. I let you know, the list is too long, right? Of course, as soon as we put it online, there were people, oh, I don't find the data that I want. Where is my facility and all that, which is good because, you know, tells me where I have to address and who I have to talk to. But to make this one work, this what's behind, and this one really condensed diagram. So we go from the data portal, which is the shiny envelope around it, and to the federated search, to the facility PaNOSC API, which talks to their catalog, and then there is some other services in there. The facility, there is a facility infrastructure portion of there, which is the facility responsibility. But the only thing that I can do is call whoever. I haven't run to the ground yet, and they're still talking to me, and ask nicely to address whatever is the issue. The PaNOSC infrastructure is what I can actually act on it, and right now runs on ESS IT infrastructure, but we can run it anywhere. So moving forward, we had this meeting at Soleil at the beginning of the month, and we did, you know, each of the facility was present, presented their achievement, what they wanted to do. For my portion, was really interesting to sit down with some of the users and tell them, here is the data portal, go and do something, do a search and tell me what's your feeling, do you find what you want, what do we need to improve, what is a meaningful search for you. And there was an interesting discussion because, of course, I came away with a long list of to-dos, and where do we want to go, right? And so that's what we are going to talk about right now. So for regarding the facility future plans, of course, it's one of the PaNOSC achievement is that every facility says we need a data catalog, because if we don't have a data catalog, we don't know which data do we have. Some of us, most of us now have it. Then, yes, we have a data catalog. We need to ingest the data and put them in. Otherwise, we cannot find them. Regarding the then, of course, you know, when you put the data into your catalog, there is a lot of work to be done because maybe it's not described correctly, or is not, somebody else comes in, doesn't find it anyway. And so there is a curation effort. That's my job, more or less. Techniques, the PaNOSC parameters, and uniform of metadata. I'm sure that you have looked at data of your facilities, and from dataset 1 to dataset 10, you have 100 different variation of the same parameters. At least that's my experience. So there, you know, you need to kind of uniform that. If you leave it to the user, probably the variation will be even more. And then, you know, we are talking just one facility. You go across facilities, that the problem is not like, I call it a problem, it's not fair, no pun intended. There is some work to be done there to be able to go across facilities and say, I'm looking for parameter A, and you know that across facility you're looking at the parameter A, which you know, in one facility 1 can be parameter A.1 uppercase, parameter A lowercase in the other facility, all this kind of stuff. Then, of course, key topic, which is the scoring. You know that the federated search goes across different facilities. One of the big questions that we had was, how do I present this data? Do I put, of course, you know, I work at ESS, ESS goes up, but then you get the rest of the facility calling us and say, we don't like that. So we need to have a fair way to present these results. So we came up with this scoring. Of course, we implemented a solution, which there was a lot of constructive criticism going back and forth, and we improve it. Of course, it's not perfect. There is many ways to implement that, but at least we have somehow fair way to say, okay, these results from ILL, from ESRF is more important to what you're asking than the one that I can provide. But of course, you know, it needs to be improved. As soon as I put it online, I kid you not, in 24 hours, I get few emails, one from somebody, not to mention, say, I don't find my results, which it was good, because honestly, being one person or two people working on the project, you know, I don't multitask. So, you know, you see and say, oh, it's good, but you cannot have the full perspective until you have somebody else that, you know, directing your attention. Anyway, so it would be nice to improve the performance. And there is, you know, one question is like, if I type in, I don't know, tech instead of technology or whatever other words, can I find the results that I want to? Right now, no, but so we need to, you know, takes time to find a solution. And of course, you know, is the one that we develop the best one, or can we use with a commercial one? There is always like this question. One thing that I can tell is that I can take the scoring and replace it with a new one without any problem, because I didn't integrate too much. I didn't make them too much interdependent. Then, of course, you know, one thing that we learn is that until you have an active participation of the community and an active participation of the user in the support community, you don't go anywhere. And across facilities, especially at federated level, the facility have to provide access to their, you know, not embargo data. Otherwise, we don't have data sets. Moving forward in terms of sustainability, we found kind of three areas. Of course, one is technology, catalogs. You need to have a catalog, otherwise we don't know what to do. And it can be something that has been developed by your facility or a collaborative project. And we need to have commons APIs. Otherwise, you know, and I think most of my job regarding PaNOSC has been talking to people, understanding where we had the overlapping and, you know, smooth out the little corners here and there. Regarding the services, of course, you know, we have the catalogs that are local to the facilities, but you have to make sure the facility and the management of the facility understand that doesn't come for free. You need some work to, you know, in that. And then, you know, who runs the federated search? Yes, now it's running ESS, but I'm, you know, hopefully my management is going to be kind and I can keep doing it. But, you know, we need to find some way to sustain that. And if you have a problem as a user, who is going to answer that question, right? Or who is the right person? Or who is the right person to know who to direct you to? Right? There are all this stuff. And then the standards, of course, ontology, formats, and schemas. How many hours of your day you spend talking about this? You know, there is a different commas somewhere in your syntax, and everything changes. So definitely, we need some way to move it forward. Of course, these one are just three of them, or few bullet points. There is a lot of work to be done. So how do we sustain it? Well, there are these two collaborative frameworks. I'm fairly new to this community. I come from neurophysiology on another continent, but here there is some opportunities that we can leverage to find some support. So both of them, Lens and Lips, have different work packages, of course, but there is an open data there, and there is data management and processing. Probably we can start, talking to, and I'm actively participating in one of them. I still haven't figured out which one, but can we leverage those one to keep going with this work? I personally don't want to see the work that I put in and, going away, but that's what's happening after a while. People forget, moving forward, down the road, a long time, can we, ideas is, of course, visualization. How do I visualize my data? Can I quickly look, if I go to the data portal and I see, oh, ESS has this data set that is really really promising, can I visualize some more information or some data there that tells me, yes, I can, this is what I want before I download, I don't know how many gigabytes, terabytes, or whatever, or even, that's where my expertise or passion is. Can I provide visualization of where this data is, with this metadata is, or what it is? Then, of course, facilitating processing and analysis, important provenance. How many of us have, you read a paper and you say, okay, how did you get there? How can I prove that your results are correct? I spent 6 months working on it one time with my boss sitting behind me. So why does it take this long? Until he had to do it. That was the key point. And then, ingestion. How many of us has issues ingesting data set, or, there are always the corner cases. Can we provide guidance on that? Upload data, sharing data. Now, up until now, we have talked about data. We haven't talked about the sample. The sample might be analyzed or part of experiments at different facilities. Can I search and say, I know that I received this sample. Where is this sample has been used across facilities? Right now, there is no way to do it. And then, curating the data in publication, of course, if we can convince people that curating data is not just a hobby, that would be great, which I've been trying to talk to people, but it's not easy. I still remember one day that I said that I was curating data, and somebody asked me, do you get paid for it? I'm like, well, once in a while. Knowledge graphs, which can be applied anyway, which leads to connectivity of data. There is a lot of thinking process there. And then, finally, data accessibility for algorithms. How can we use machine readable, or usable? So how can you help? First of all, if you have 15 minutes and you know how to program or do anything, please let me know. It will be appreciated. But definitely, we need to teach people that the data curator is not your enemy. There is the light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, the data curation, and that's what I do. Most of the time, you get questions that you're like, why are you asking me this stuff? Well, that's not my focus. I wanna get my data. I wanna analyze my data. We are, as data curator, I'm standing at the end of the other side, and I see them coming. And how many times have you sit behind somebody and say, I have to show you this data, and they click, I don't know, 10, 20, 40 different folders and files, and you're like, okay. How many times do I have to say, why don't we put in a database, right? And so engage, of course, with communities, the proton and neutron communities, or any communities, to standardize data formats. How many data formats have you seen in your life? A list, I don't know, 10,000. And then, of course, the domain communities, that's, the niche ones. And to relate it to that, can we develop like the data portal, and can we reuse it for different communities? Can it be just a framework that you can just download it and install it and configure it somehow? And then, yes, use the data portal and send, feedback, please, because the corner cases or your case might be far away from what in my everyday life, and I do not figure out if you want to call it the error or the mistake until somebody comes up to me and say, let me grab your coffee, let's talk, right? And then of course, fair data to everybody. I wrote young scientist, but I would say scientist there across. I think in my 15 years of being a data curator in some different shape and form, the youngest generation, of course, you have to teach them and show them that the benefits that are not coming right away, which goes against the smartphone usage, because it's like, oh, I get it right away, right? But the hardest ones are the older one, because they are not used to deal with such a big chunk of data. And I had a scientist that same my age coming to me and say, why do you want to have a database? In my time, I just wrote everything on a piece of paper. And I told him, well, I think I'm going to find another job. It happened after 2 years, but it's okay. So when you find these, these answers, those are the ones that are hard for you, because, basically invalidate all your work. But then it's like, okay, how can I convince you that what I'm doing is you're, actually needed in the long run? And guess what? Of course, he was one that would spend hours going around these students.
1 minute.
These students to find his data, where they were and how they were analyzed. And so that ties back. With that, that's my email and Tobias' email. And of course, we, this one were put together with Alun. And so if your name is not there and you feel that I need to say thank you to you, my thanks, because this work has not been just my or Tobias doing. There are probably plenty of people that I've been pestering here and there with different level of success. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Massimiliano. We have questions online, so don't be so quick. Nicoletta, can you read them, please?
Yes, we have a question from Marta Gutierrez from EGI, who asks, how can you see this work going forward in the context of the new calls where data access and sharing need to happen across multiple domains and clusters, so to say other communities?
Well, there is a lot of PR work there that you have to do. So in general, the technology part is not the hardest part. The technology part, yes, of course, there are challenges in the technologies, but if you have a group of people that believes in what they're doing, you get it done. So the hardest part is always finding the agreement or where to go. But definitely, you have to start, I agree with Drew, that you have to start talking, doing PR. You have to be able to show some of your data of previous work. And sometimes you have to go against everybody else, of course, but once you are able to show that what you're presenting, you get a lot of benefits, everybody comes on board. And of course, you have to be open to, get criticized and, and say, okay, this is the solution that I have right now. Of course, if you have a better way to do it, show me that I'd be happy to adopt it. But definitely, there is a lot of discussion there. There is no way around.
Okay. Any other online questions? No. So, questions from the people on site. We had lots of questions previously, so don't be shy now. It's your opportunity. We have Mr. Dimpa.
Let's see if I can answer.
He's gonna be very
Oh,
positive.
there we go.
Nice comment.
No, just a question goes into the same direction as the question from EGI. Now, are you discussing right in the moment with OpenAir to actually get our metadata, let's say the plan metadata, harvested on the level of ESC?
Not to my knowledge, but definitely, I will be open to, of course. As I told you, I'm really new to this community, so I haven't found all the ways. Definitely, yes, I will be, but I don't know if it's going to happen. First, I have to ask to my management first. Yeah.
Yeah, so OpenAir harvests the metadata. This is kind of different from the federated search, but that is already...
Is that one open? Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. My fault.
Okay, and we have another question from Tomasz.
Hello, thank you. Can you recommend a sustainable way of defining the metadata set which is flexible enough that the individual scientists can define certain metadata tags on their own, but still the federated search remains usable in the sense that they don't use different syntax or whatever in metadata tags? To me, this seems to be a challenge. I don't know if you agree with this or not.
So the PaNOSC has a few metadata that have been agreed upon, but that doesn't cover everything from the different disciplines of different facilities. It depends how you want to approach it. Top down, you don't get everything that you want. If you bottom up, you get a lot of variability in there. So each facility has to kind of like juggle and see how, between management users and the people that are working on. My experience in the past, ESS, I'm still fairly new, so I don't know yet. In the past, I've been like, just give me what you have, describe it, and then we use any, the tools that are around to analyze the language that you've used, the metadata that you give me, to see what is your variability and come up like the 10 questions that make you start thinking, and then we can move on. Of course, I wasn't working at a huge project. Here probably I would see a mix of top down and bottom up. So here's what I want you to tell me. And then if you want something else, put it in. Of course, when you go across facility, it will be harder to search for the specialized one. So then you have to do what in PaNOSC has been done before my time, to what's out there, what is the important thing, the variability that it's out there, which one do we pick, which one do we agree on it? Okay, guys, now, this parameter that you call A, B, C, D is going to be called parameter A. Everybody has to, adhere to that.
Okay, we have another question. Hold on a sec.
I think that one of the specific challenges that we have is with metadata, because we have a very diverse community. A lot of the essential data to analyze the data later on is related to the sample, things that are outside of the control of the facilities. I think that in the end, what the scientists do better, when they do the best job, is when they publish a paper and then they describe really what they did. You didn't talk about this, but it was mentioned there, linking to the publishers and to the publications. What are your goals or your ideas around this?
So that one comes from somebody from Alun and from somebody else. But in terms of the publication, definitely, if you publish a paper, right now, in probably 80% of the time, I see that you have to provide where is your data and how you got to the results, right? The code that you have used. So can we link can we make that link, right? In that case. Right now, sometimes you still get some papers where they say we get these results, but you are not able to reproduce what's happened. Yeah, how do you get there, right? So it turns back to the provenance. In that specific bullet point was, if I look at the paper, can I go back? And if I look at my data, can I see which paper has been used, has been produced using this data? In terms of the metadata that you're talking about, if we have that somehow, then you can look at the paper and do some natural language processing or see what they did and say, oh, by the way, if we want to describe our data better, we can use some of this information. How you get there, we need to figure it out. But that's what I see as a personal development for myself. That's what we are looking into actually. So, and defining the metadata, that is a moving target.
Yeah, this I understand is challenging. Do you know if there is any kind of also confederated efforts, for example, to push the publishers to not publish, to reject a paper if the data are not available?
Not that I know of. So far, my experience has been that, the scientist wants to publish the paper, and the curation, the fair data, the fairness of the data has been like, first I publish, and then I can apply for the next grant, that. But no, that I know of, no. But, that's my limited experience.
Okay, thank you, Miguel. We have another question here.
Maybe it's just more a comment. So this is a process that goes in two directions. One goes from the publisher asking for the provenance of the data. On the other hand, also the research infrastructure could push to have the list of published data linked to a certain set of data. When someone is going to ask for the next beamline, in the next proposal, one should do a list of all the publications coming from that same research infrastructure linking to the previous data, such that they can have a higher ranking to get an assigned beam time. So this could be a process that could be integrated in...
I think that, yes, I agree with you, and I'd be happy to brainstorm, but I agree with Drew. You cannot force it. It's like you have to convince the person that has the information that it is a good idea to share this information on your data or whatever it is, and it's in their best interest, and they gain something at the end, because otherwise it's seen as it's time taken away from what my goal is. And
I just want to make a comment about the publications, and also to Miguel, is this is the case on some of the landing pages already in some facilities. So at ILL and ESRF, we link to, I think, Crossref to find out which publications are linked to those DOIs. So I think this is a service which can be integrated automatically. I don't know how complete it is. Maybe an expert from Puma can explain this more. But this is happening already, and to my mind, this is not really the job of the search portal. This is a job of each facility on the landing page. Yeah.
The search portal can leverage. So,
any further questions or comments? Nothing. So, thank you very much again, Massimiliano.
Thank you.
And with that, we go to the last talk before the lunch break. I hope you're not too hungry. Andy's gonna talk now. Andy, well, everybody knows Andy has been working for the ESRF for a very long time, been involved in many EU-funded projects related to open data for the photon and neutron community, and he has been the coordinator for PaNOSC. We have been working in a tandem, so that's it, Andy. The floor is yours.
And This talk will normally be short. The idea is to get you to talk more than me, so it's more interactive than, because I was running out of time making slides, and I really wanted to work on the future development. So what is really WP2 going to do next? Yeah. So this works. Yeah.
That works indeed.
The main topics of what we dealt with in WP2 were the data policies, the validation, guidelines for helping people to do fair data management, and the DMPs. So all topics which are, from the scientist point of view, are not so sexy and sometimes even painful, and they don't want to really work on this. But these are all essential for all of the other services that are going to follow on. So for the fair data policy, what we worked on, and I'm very pleased to say we worked on this with Expanse, so there was a very good work from the beginning, updating and existing the PAN data fair data policy. This was then adopted immediately by Eli, Ceric, Eric, well, not immediately, after a certain amount of work, because once you have the update, then getting it through all of the different councils and all the decision-making bodies takes time. Yeah? It takes a lot of energy, a lot of convincing and time. But 3 of them actually got it through, and ESS was the most recent one, I think was a month ago, that this was accepted by the SAC, is it? Or I don't know if it's still, has it been accepted? It's under revision. So yeah, it's very complex. Once you have one now, we've seen also to update it, and so this is still ongoing work. But this doesn't mean that these facilities who are in progress, they already have data policies in place. The paper that we wrote was fairly well looked at, so it was viewed over 1,600 times and downloaded over 1,000 times. And I think the ongoing work now for the remainder, because even if we, let's say, this has to go on, you can't stop the data policy. It's something which is agreed, for instance, in the case of ESRF, it's in the statutes of the ESRF. So we have to keep on implementing it if things are missing. In our case, this is always the challenge for all facilities, is the 2 challenges. The shorter one is adopting it. The longer one is implementing it. And I know at Soleil, we had this in the recent PEB meeting of Expanse, explained of the big difficulty of, even if you have a policy, getting it then to the step of having it implemented is huge. Sometimes almost is like a barrier doing that. And at ESRF, we have, I'd say, 95%, but there's still 2 beamlines that are still being difficult or tricky to integrate. And then there's also varying degrees of implementation. So this is a never-ending job. The other thing, so this will go on. And I think there we could continue sharing experience through the different, either the future project or the project organizations like LEAPS and LENS. The other topic is DOIs. So I think this has been mentioned by Jean-Francois, and we've discussed with Paul as an idea how to make the DOI, the access to data through the DOI, a standard machine actionable system, so that machines can go and get data if they just have the DOI. Today, this is not standardized, and this is not actually, this is something which we want to explore in the future, at least as part of the next project. An area which is a big area of, let's say, a sort of work in progress, in the sense that most scientists are not citing their DOI still. So we have a very low number of scientists or publications that cite the data DOIs. So there we are. I think in ESRF, we're under the 10% for sure. We might even be under 5%. And that is a challenge of how to get this, how to let's say, kickstart this process, that it becomes something that keeps on growing. Yeah. I know ILL had a big campaign, and they got up to a certain figure, which was impressive. I think for us it was 30% or something. But if this is something we have to work on in the future. I don't know how. If you have ideas, this is why I'm asking you. And then I think there's fairsharing.org, which is a repository that comes from the EOSC Life project, or I think even from the life sciences, and that's where we could be publishing most of the policies as well as standards and so on. And I think this is something we'd like to work on in the next project with the other clusters. This is a very nice piece of work, and I strongly, we will continue on this even after the end of PaNOSC tomorrow, is work started by Sophie Servan from Expands, having a sustainability spreadsheet, sustainability sheet for each of the outcomes of PaNOSC and Expands. And then also going through what are the different, what does it mean, who's adopting it, what is the work involved, what is the documentation involved, and everything. So it's a very nice document. I think we should somehow highlight this somewhere. And Sophie has done all of this work already, getting this first version filled in. And it's up to each of us now, or the work package leaders, to continue working on this. And as part of this, she's also worked on the where do we have data policies adopted? And you can see, I mean, for people like the older people in the audience who've been here for a while, this is a figure which in 2010 was I don't know how many, maybe there was only ISIS and then ILL, but you know, we've gone from 1 and 2 to now almost everyone. And the next step, of course, is to get, and I know Diamond has just started a survey last week, so they will be moving also to having, Elliot was telling me, there will be a data policy, open data policy in place. So we can say that, you know, we almost, in the whole community, we now have open data policies, either in place or in the process of being filled in. The second thing was the DMPs. So this was also a common work with Expands, and we worked on something which most people, I saw at most of the talks that we gave at the symposium, or wherever I spoke about the active DMPs, was a new concept to many people. So the active DMPs, where the DMP is constantly updated to reflect the current status of the data production and data management. So we had 3 facilities that have worked on this. There was ESS, was the first one, so work by Frederick, which we then copied at ESRF, and which Marjolaine very impressively rolled out for all of the ESRF proposals. So we have a DMP filled in for all of the ESRF proposals. The big challenge, however, is this last line here. If you look here, how to make this useful. So we have a scientist, at least one in the room here, who is very, you know, he's just telling us exactly what the added value is from a scientist point of view is still close to 0. So we have to work on making it more than 0. Yeah? And we have some ideas also with Marjolaine, and which we will share with the community, of how to provide something that is a summary, a useful summary for scientists. Yeah? It's already useful for people who have to fill in a DMP, but if you don't have to, the question is, what is the use? Yeah? So this was we are busy writing 2 papers actually for Data Science Journal on this work. And we've also got an offer from the Data Steward Wizard group, which is the DMP software that we adopted from Elixir and EOSC Live. They have offered to work with us. So this will be a meeting we'll be having next month probably to work with them. Again, we have Sophie's fantastic oeuvre, yeah, which is this work on the DMPs and where we are, and we've even got some owners, which we've given some names to. But you can see this is a very nice summary of what was actually done in the project. And I think once we have this these completed and reviewed, it'll be like a document people can get a quick update. The guidelines, I just wanted to say we did publish also guidelines on how to implement research data policy. We worked on, thanks to Andrew, I was pushed in the summer school to do a training course there, and I learned about HTML5. So I did my own little course. I learned how to use HTML5 and did a course, and I think that was very useful for me at least. And now we have to, and I know that Theodore also gave some courses to the Eli users meetings. So, you know, this is something where we were very active up until now, but I think we have to continue this work. And the data stewards that you mentioned as well, Una, they have a kind of, I would say, duty to continue spreading this, this knowledge. Yeah? So I already have volunteered, for instance, there's the African School on Light Sources, which will happen next year in Trieste. It'll be online, but it'll be hosted by the Institute of Theoretical Physics. There's a typical case where the scientists should be learning, or the people wanting to build synchrotrons should be learning about this. Yeah, and so they didn't have this in their course, and I proposed this and that this could be added. There's also something happening with industry. So, you know, I think it's up to all of us to carry this message further and bring it online for the future. We started a nice piece of work. Rudolf was very hard work, very useful in making this application to self-certify our data repository, but we're missing one final step. And tomorrow we'll hear some feedback from the social sciences, where they have over 50 repositories that are self-certified CTS. So we have obviously, you know, we've got something to do there still if we want to work on having this. And I think in the future there will be a request to have certified repositories, not just any old repository. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah. So yes, thanks to everyone. I mean, this is all the work of all the people. I was a work package leader, but this is the work of all of the people who I haven't mentioned, yeah, who would have done a sterling job making these non-trivial tasks, bringing them to a result. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you very much, Andy.
So yes, actually, I did want to know if what are your ideas, but I think you also want lunch, so maybe you can give me your ideas over lunch. It's up to you.
We have time for questions, so if anyone has questions or ideas, and we see already one person, do we have people online proposing something as well? Not for now, so Fabio, please.
Yeah, kind of a comment on the DMPs, because we are also now looking into, yeah, it's quasi adopted, but implementation wise, I agree that this is a dynamic process of the DMP, right? That idea, and on the zero level, starting maybe after accepted proposal, there's of course a lot of information that you could automatically fill, right? I think the challenge is a little bit to find the levels of communication between the three sides: data management, instrument, and user. How to formalize this in terms of a document, right? How to adapt it as a data lifecycle grows, right? As we say. So, but here I think there's a motivation from the users, because they are anyway asking us often, could we have another resource allocation? Could we have this? I mean, this discussion is at many beam times. If this is channeled into a process that is reflected in the DMP, right? That's probably the way to go, I think. And then it's not only seen as a burden by the scientists, but also as something they benefit from, of course.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think you know the DMP offers this possibility of structuring this, and this kind of these kind of questions and answers today in our facilities are often handled via email. Before the user comes to the beamline, he asks the beamline scientist, how will I get the data? How will this work? Then he asks the beamline scientist, tells them how much they can get in compute resource. So it's very informal. And I think we can structure this in a better way. I see the difficulty, and this is where we have to work on the presentation, is today we have this great template of 80 questions. But anyone who sees 80 answers, you know, or 80 questions, this is just overwhelming. We have to somehow condense that. We were thinking with Marjolaine having a template which has just this really useful information that this user asks about. And the other information, which is about the legal aspects or about other things, could be there, but not presented. At least, you know,
not presented or automatically filled as much as possible, right?
Yeah. So I think so, but okay, we still have some resistance also from our scientists, who many of them say, well, we're happy exchanging lots of emails, which, well, I think, yeah, it's one way of seeing things, you know, but the other ways. Yeah.
Okay, so
there was one, Brian, I think Brian was next also, but yeah, Brian.
I'll come back later there.
Just to add to this, because we had the first Eli Eric user call. And in our case, as you'll see probably the presentation tomorrow, we had the 2 stages approach, where basically the first stage of the DMP is in the proposal submission. So whatever is generic, whatever is legal acknowledgement, whatever is policy acknowledgement and so on, it's in the first stage. And the rest goes through the experimental preparation phase, where we encourage the discussions between the user and the local IT group, the local data management group, so that these questions are also translated. Because in some cases, if the user brings an instrument, a scientific instrument on site, it's the case that usually they don't really know all these details, and we also have to identify new ways to integrate or do basic data integration and collect the data for the user. So a multi-stage approach, I think, would be suitable, and at the same time, a very targeted approach for the specifics of each experiment would be also interesting, because each of the calls is targeting certain instruments, and the instrument scientists are the ones who can evaluate and basically guide the definition of the DMP for the future users applying for the experiments. Or at least this is how we see it at this stage.
I don't know what the situation is like in Eli, but the user, the beamline scientists are in our case close to burnout, most of them. Yeah. So they haven't, they just see more work in the beginning. Yeah. It's a difficult one at the moment. Yeah.
Couple of things. Yeah, just to echo what you said about data management plans. I mean, I think they should be called computational access requests or something, so people actually want to fill them in because they know they're going to get something out of them, because they're going to do it. They do it anyway, as you say, and if we tie it into existing systems, we can get a lot of the information anyway. That wasn't my main point. My main point is I kind of interested you looking at core trust seal, because we started to look at that in expands, but we've focused on, instead of looking at repository certification, looking at fair assessment and seeing if the data we generate from facilities is fair and what level it is fair. And we've done a major exercise over the last few months just about to come out on fair assessment. And I think the important thing there is looking at an individual data set or in a repository isn't any use for us. We want to actually look at our process, the way we generate data, what we do to annotate it during its generation, and see if that's fair, because then every data set that comes out will be fair. So one of the things I'd want to look at in sort of that future sustainability is, we haven't done this exercise once just recently in the expands context, how we might repeat that in future years, and extend it to facilities outside of expands. So that's something I think we would add to our wish list of things to sustain.
We also got just last week, I think we got a comment saying we should look at Fuji. You know, there's some tools are trying to do this, but I don't know. Yeah. Okay. No, I also didn't get positive feedback from the other clusters on Fuji, but yeah. I think this is important, but I think that the core trust seal, at least repository certification, will be recommended will be useful in the future also.
Well, Andy, it's not really a question, it's really a comment. I'm commenting on your comment about the way we can really now go and make real all the outcomes of what came from PaNOSC and expands, because my feeling is that more or less we are going the right way, and we conceived, even prepared, developed some valuable tools to help scientists to go towards open data, fair data. But my feeling is that the more challenging for us will be to have the scientists getting in. I'm in charge of the implementation of the data policy at Soleil. And what I can say is that at the time we are talking about all these topics, scientists are not yet really convinced, even by this philosophy of opening data and going towards open science. They have the feeling that minting the device, preparing DMPs, and so on, we are talking about how this is important for open science, but they are seeing this only as burden and added work for them. And the most important thing is that they don't yet see what will be the benefit for them. When I talk to the scientists at Soleil about DOIs, opening data, they are all there in the situation of waiting for the others to start, because the first one who will open his data, he has the feeling that it will be used by others before I'm saying real answers from the scientists. Now, the idea is that beyond the technical part, I think we must think about organizing regular presentation in the user, all around, because they are not still aware of what we are saying here.
No, that's what I wanted to also, in a way, imply with this. We went from one facility, ISIS, or zero before 2010, to now almost all of them. There has been a cultural change in the facilities, in the IT or in the management levels, but the scientists are not. Let's say they are not pushing for this. However, I would say that a lot of the services that we offer around data, we wouldn't offer if we didn't have this as our objective. And this is something where they don't ask, I want a DOI, but they're very happy to have their data managed. They're very happy to be able to download it, to be able to refer to it from a publication. So the added value, I think, is there already, because this motivates you to add these things that they do use, but they don't ask for it in the same way. I think, just to give you an example of ESRF, we wouldn't be managing any data if we didn't have a data policy. The data would come onto disk and get deleted, and that's it. There would be no trace of it afterwards. And I think for the user, that time when it was like that in the 2000s, compared to today, where they say, I want to see my process data displayed in the portal and click and go download. The reason they can do that is because we've got a data policy in place, because we have all of these other goals also in place, But of course, they didn't come and say, I want a DOI.
We have last two questions. So.
Hi, Andy. So not really a question, but more a comment. I think having a DMP is anyway will be requested by funders. And I already have beamline scientists asking me to help them filling the DMP. But also I had this comment from Federica Marone from the tomography beamline at PSI saying that users sometimes come with a 1 terabyte hard disk to save their data naively without realizing that it will be much more than that. So at least it's not zero benefit for them, it helps them planning ahead. And related to that, there's really an aspect I would like to discuss more, at least to my knowledge hasn't been discussed enough, is data curation. What roles and responsibilities it implies. I personally think we should have a flag from the users on the data quality. Is it complete junk? Is it worth? I don't know. This kind of things.
And I think, also related to that, as a point, maybe this afternoon you'll see what happens to data downstream. When you get derived data, who owns it? What license is on it? And these things, this becomes also part of our discussion now that we have the data, the raw data under a certain license. People are still unclear. I mean, I've been asked to speak to people next week, users, about what our policy means legally for them if they want to use the data for something else and so on.
Okay, and now we have the very last question before lunch.
No pressure. I'm going to repeat the question I had before on data stewards and people from the centers with funding directly from the centers for data curation, data stewardship, to ensure that things move forward. I know the status in Helmholtz, but what's the status in the other centers? Because I think this is the key to the problem, or one of the really important things.
I see it as twofold, the answer. First of all, and this is something, a point we made a lot, I think in LEAP's, remember Patrick, LEAP's meeting last year, plenary, the one which was held at Alba, I think, saying each facility, first of all, must have data stewards, must hire people dedicated to data stewardship. And this was a requirement or a strong recommendation. I don't think it's the case everywhere yet, but I'm not sure. Yeah? I know, at least in our case, we have at least 2 people who have that, let's say, role. The second thing is, once you have those people, they should feel some kind of obligation to go and help and also explain this to other people. And I think this is where I noticed because I just was on, by chance, I was on this African Light Sources school announcement, and I suddenly realized there's nothing about data management. And I could have had the reaction, well, PaNOSC is over, I shut up. But I didn't, I went to the organizers and said, I see there's nothing about data management. If you need a speaker, we can find one. And I also volunteered. But this, I think, is our role as data stewards, to continue carrying this this message.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andy.
You're welcome.